to another episode of Business with Passion. Each show features guests who have transformed their long-term passion into a successful business. I'm your host, Jay Hamilton Roth. My marketing strategy business grew from my love of talking with passionate business owners. In this series, I share their passion with you. So if you're looking for inspiration to enhance your business passion, keep watching.
My long-term passion is that people who work on the front line understand that by working with other people, by serving other people, that it's actually an art form. And if they do it well, that they're artists. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, and I never fit in. I love my family. They're all there still. I have these two sisters that I completely adore that are now grandmas in Cleveland, and they're just precious. And my mom and dad are great. I had this really loving family, and I just had to leave. And so, because California's my home, and I knew it from the time I was 12 years old. I came here on a trip with friends of the family, and I got to Sausalito, California. And I looked around and I went, people live here? If people live here, then I'm living here. And so from the time I was 12, I announced that I was just going to move to San Francisco, and that was it. When I went to high school, the only two options that you had basically when you graduated high school, where I went to high school, is that you worked in a gas station or you went to college. I mean, there wasn't even a choice. I had no idea, really, until years later that people had a choice, whether they went to college or that they didn't go to college. And then, so of course I went to college. And then in those days, the thing is for women, in those days you could be a teacher, you could be a nurse, or you could be a secretary. Basically, that's what you could do. So there was no choice there either. It was, okay, I'll be a teacher. And I really didn't know that I had the soul of a teacher then. But that's what I did, and so I went to school to become a teacher. But when I was 20 years old, and I absolutely knew everything when I was 20, everything. So I was so bored. So I was in school, and they were giving out these student teaching assignments, and I hear the teacher say, oh, well, there's one school that you could go to, but you would have to be different to go there. So I went, I'll go, different. So they sent me to this place that they called the School for the Crippled Children. No euphemisms, nothing. And so I went there and I announced to the teacher that I was there to be the teacher. And she said, you know, why don't you just sit in the back for a while and just observe us? And what I observed that day with these 14 very disabled kids changed my life. And I knew that I was there to learn and not there to teach. And I went back and I changed my major and I got my master's in teaching orthopedically handicapped children. The first thing that I learned is that not only didn't I know everything, I don't think I knew anything. And when I understood that, it really changed my life and it changed who I was, and understanding what it meant to serve, to really get what it meant to serve and also what it meant to be willing. Because when you have disabilities, you need to show such extreme willingness, and they taught me willingness when I was a very young woman. And through that was life-changing. To understand that even if it looked like you didn't have what it took to get a job done, that if you were willing, that you could get it done. And I learned patience from working with disabled children, because it took a lot of patience. And I had a deep understanding from working with children like that, that if I was open, that I could learn every single day. When I first moved to San Francisco, I was 26 years old and I couldn't find a job. So what I did was I worked in a hotel lobby. But what happened was I worked for a tour company. I worked for a tour company that had a little desk in the back of the lobby at the Hyatt on Union Square. And it was right at the time that there was the bicentennial. And Gray Line Tours was the only tour company in San Francisco in 1976. And their drivers thought it would be a good idea to go on strike. So every Wildcat tour company opened up in San Francisco pretty much overnight. When I first got the job at the hotel for the $25 a day, and I was so all of my friends were telling me, you can't work for $25 a day, you can't work for $25 a day. I'm like, no, there's something here, I know it, this is it. And so they were driving me a little crazy though. So I went for a walk and I looked up at the sky and I said, okay God, give me a sign. And I'm walking in North Beach, and about 2 minutes later, somebody taps me on the shoulder and they say, excuse me, but could you give me directions to the Hyatt on Union Square? And I said, as a matter of fact, I was just going there myself. I went to the ladies' room one day, literally went to the ladies' room. When I came back, Gray Line had settled their strike and they put up pickets at the front door of the hotel and they closed my desk. And so I go back from the bathroom and I go, I don't have a job. And so the general manager said, well, what do you want to do now? I said, well, I think you should hire me. And so they did. And at that point, I still didn't know that what I was doing was a concierge. I had been there for 3 months. And so they got me this job and they hired me. I still had this little cubbyhole in the back of the lobby. But then I read an article, and it was in Town and Country magazine, and it said, nothing but nothing phases the omnipotent concierge. And there I am, I'm 26 years old, I see this article with all these old French guys with these 2 telephones in their ears, and I read it and it says that these people are omnipotent, that their guests love them, that they know their cities, that they're powerful, and I went, that's who I am, I'm that. I'm an omnipotent concierge. And I told my general manager that that's what I was and that I couldn't be in the back of the lobby, that I needed to have a desk in the front of the lobby. And I drove him so crazy that finally one day he went out and bought me, there was a store in San Francisco in those days called Sloan's. It was this gorgeous furniture store. And he went out and bought me an inlaid desk, this absolutely huge desk, put it in the middle of the lobby and said, leave me alone. So it turns out that in San Francisco in 1976, they were starting a concierge association that was based on the European Concierge Association. And since there were no concierge in America, this gentleman from the Fairmont Hotel named Tom Wolfe, he organized a whole bunch of bellmen to have some meetings. Well, I heard about this, and so I said, well, I want to come to that meeting. Oh, they didn't want me to come because they'd never had female concierge. And I'm like, you guys, excuse me, you should come and watch me work then. This is 1976. If I don't do the same work that you do, then don't invite me. But if I do, you have to invite me. And so they did. They came and watched me work, and then they invited me to the meeting. So I became the very first female concierge to ever be admitted into the International Concierge Association called Les Clés d'Or. Yes, I really was in the right place at the right time. A day in the life of a concierge is not every day that something exciting really happens. You're booking airport shuttles, you're booking limousines, you're changing flights, you're dealing with lost luggage, you're telling people what to do in San Francisco. And it's really fun. I mean, the first time in the first morning, somebody comes up and says, hi, we've never been here before. And you go, okay, great, let me tell you what to do. And then at the 75th time in the same day, like, really? You've never been here? Okay, let me tell you, it's so great here, what to do here. And every once in a while, somebody asks you for something completely wacky. And if you're really a good concierge, you love those kinds of questions. You want people to ask you to plan their proposal, to figure out how can you get a pound of ox gallstones, which is a question that my assistant found them. She just called Mrs. Harris from Harris's Restaurant, who gave her the number of the rancher at Harris Ranch, and she called him, and sure enough, they had an ox with gallstones. Those kinds of things don't happen every day, but when they do, and you love what you do, you're like, yes! One of the things that's always been a passion for me is to combine the things that I love to do. So creativity is really important to me, and I've always loved being an actor. And make-believe. I adore make-believe. I love to be in plays. I like to put on a show. And so to me, to be a concierge was to put on a show. I would put on a costume. I would think before I would go to work, lights, camera, action. And I was on stage, and I also understood that by being on stage that the show must go on, that you can't put it on sale. There's no such thing as putting service on sale that it's half price. You just have to perform, you got to go out there, you got to do it. And I loved that aspect of being in the center of the lobby and being able to perform and in some ways have it be reality and make-believe all at the same time. When I first had the passion to teach the concierge, most people looked at me like I was crazy. Like, who wants to learn this? I mean, this isn't any, I mean, the first seminar that I ever wrote was in 1979, and I called it Courtesy Training for Profit, the Art of Service. And in 1979, people looked at me like, what? What are you talking about? Go away. We just think no one wants to hear this. And I'm like, no, this is really great. Like, you don't understand. The concierge, it's an art form. It's amazing. If everybody behaved like a concierge, the world would be a better place. And people were looking at that. We don't know how to pronounce it. We don't know what it is. What are you talking about? Like, no. I know it. I just know it. And so it took me from 1977 around, when I first got the idea to write a book about the concierge, until 1992 to finally get a publisher. I mean, by the time I published my first book, which is called Ultimate Service, The Complete Handbook to the World of the Concierge, everyone I knew thought it was my second book because I talked about it so much. It's really easy to look at my career now and to say, well, yeah, she was a hotel concierge and she turned it into a training company and she did all the training for Hilton hotels and Hyatt hotels. And, you know, when I went and did the training for Hyatt Place hotels and delivered that training for their entire company, and I had a whole room of vice presidents there, and I got a standing ovation. And I stood there and I received that standing ovation. I took it in because it was 27 years in the making. I waited for that for 27 years to feel that acknowledgement from the company that I worked for. And because I went to them in 1980 and said, why don't you make me your vice president in charge of the concierge and send me all over the country, and I could really help this company. And it was so far from anything that they were interested in doing. And they basically just said, we're not interested. And so brokenhearted, I went home, and for 12 years, I was kind of annoyed about that. And then when I finally left, and I love Hyatt Hotels and the career that I had there and how good that they really were to me and what I learned. But the fact that they didn't want this passion, they didn't want this. But I wanted to give it to them so badly. And all those years later, that it took me from leaving and then close to another 17 years until I stood in front of that room, having delivered that training for the entire company, that this happened. So it's so easy to look at it and go, oh yeah, look, you know, it's all perfect now. But I can remember when I first left being a concierge, nobody would take my calls. And that was horrible. I mean, it was so awful to me because when I was a concierge, I sent business to places. And so for years, I would call and everybody took my call. Well, as you know, before I was a concierge, I was a teacher, so I didn't have any business experience really. And so everybody took my calls. And then all of a sudden, I'm on my own, I have a little office in my house, and I'm calling people that I've known for years, and they're in a meeting. And I'm thinking, how come nobody was in a meeting for 17 years? Nobody was in a meeting. And now all of a sudden, everybody is in a meeting because now I'm selling something to them and I'm not bringing them business. And I was literally like fetal. I was like on the floor, like, whoa. I'm realizing that nobody's going to knock on the door and go, okay, hello, business, hello. You have to do that. And so there was a lot of times where it wasn't so easy to do. Most companies have customer service 101. They have it down. I mean, they can teach you how to answer the telephone. They can teach you to do that on 3 rings. They can teach customer service from a standards point of view. And I understand that. And that was never my passion. And I didn't want to do that. I wanted to get deeper. I teach customer service from here, from your gut, because that's the place that it really comes from. If you have to talk to 400 people a day, you better know how to get deep and really be able to pull from a place that's really real. And that's the place that I teach from. And I understand to help people so that they understand the value of being in the thank you business. Because when we're in the thank you business, instead of whatever the heck business it is, and it doesn't matter what it is, if it's banking or NASCAR or whatever, if you are in the thank you business, it changes the way that you look at it. And for years, I used Elvis as a metaphor, because at the end of every song, Elvis would kind of curl up his lip and say, thank you very much. And because I believe that service is a performance art, that what we can learn from a legendary performer like that is that what we're in is the thank you business. And I help people to understand that, and I help people to actually want to come to work every day and serve other people, because it isn't only for their experience, the guest or customer experience, it's for the experience of the service provider. And because I was on the other side of the desk for so many years, that's the place that I really come from the point of view of the person who is providing the service. And there's a term that I coined years ago that's called the psychic salary, which is the other paycheck. What is it that you receive from serving other people? And by helping people to see that and to understand that, that's the beginning of a path that every day they can open up to getting into the human needs that are underneath the business needs. And when we start paying attention to the real human needs that are going on, that is where we connect with other people. And it's through the connection that is a direct result to the wallet. My business today, I have had an opportunity and continue to have opportunities to teach all over the world, where I share the experiences of a world-class concierge and how to think like one to different audiences all over the world. I have gone to NASCAR and to the Bank of America. I have taught this in places like Poland and to the secretaries of South Africa. And so it's brought me to these amazing places and to really bring this philosophy to people from diverse backgrounds from all over, from security guards in Houston, Texas at high-tech companies to actual people doing the job of the concierge. I am a master collaborator. I love collaboration. I absolutely know in the deepest place that I only know a little bit, and I only know what I know, and I'm only good at what I'm good at. So I have always worked with teams of people, with groups of people. I for sure have the world's most supportive husband. And I have partners that I work with. I've worked with writing partners for years. For years I worked with producers, and we did all the training for Hilton and Hyatt. And now I'm working with a fantastic group of people out of England, and they're just brilliant. And we've created something together that we call the Silk Experience. And so we've taken what I've done for all of these years, and we have now up-leveled it and upgraded it to the qualities of silk. In order to be accessible to all sorts of people, that's incredibly important, because sure, if you're a big corporation, you could bring me in. But if you're just, let's say, an individual, let's say you even work in a dental office and you're just an individual and you're watching this and you would like to be inspired by this, well, I have books and tapes, and we're putting together some online learning. And so there are ways to get this without having to do a giant corporate job, although giant corporate jobs are good too. Where I'm going with my business is really twofold. And one of the folds has to do with silk, and it's the Silk Experience. And that's a book. It is internet activity, so it's to have an interactive web-based program, it's to travel with it, it's to do some corporate programs with it. So it's really taking that whole idea, which is we're looking at it as Service 103. So 101 is what all companies have. I believe that the neon signs of service that I created in my career up until now is Service 102, and the Silk experience is now Service 103. So that is one fold of my business. And the other fold has really not a lot to do with business per se. And so I have a whole nother area that I've become passionate about in the last 7 years. And that has to do with imagination and being open to your own creativity and your own imagination. And I have expressed this by being lucky enough to have an enchanted path in my backyard in Northern California. And it's a path that runs all the way through this yard, and I absolutely have to share it. On the day that we moved in, of course the house was totally empty, except for these two totally curious items. And one was this fairy chime bell, and the other was a unicorn crossing sign. And I'm thinking, okay, these were not left here by accident. I knew that they were left here as a sign. And so I followed the sign to the previous owner and her 6-year-old child. And I called the mother and I said, I would like to meet your little girl. And for the next 3 years, every time that I went up to the coast, I had dates with Tessa. And she became my teacher. And I followed her around with a notebook and a pen, and I wrote down every single thing she said, even though we both knew that half the time, most of the time, she was just making it up right on the spot. But I didn't care, because I knew that she knew things that I had no idea about. I was amazed to meet a fairy princess with blonde hair that came straight down from Pluto, right to a plant in the middle of my backyard, or to come upon a fairy ball that was in the 1,000-year-old ballroom. And I was completely enchanted by it. And Tessa and I decided to build a path through the woods. And together, she showed me where the path would go. And then I hired day laborers and workers to come and do all the heavy lifting and build this path. And it took me 7 years to build this. And I know some people would buy a home on the coast and maybe they'd relax and hang out in a lovely redwood forest, but not me. I built a path through it, and it has stops along the way, and each stop along the way was another lesson. It was a lesson that I've learned in life of how to walk a path of enchantment. So now, after 7 years, I've begun to write about it. I've written my first book called The Wisdom of the Wizard, which is inspired by one of the stops along the path, which is called The Wizard's Circle. I also have a keynote speech about it, a workshop with activities. I made a movie of it where I bring the forest to you, because it's my home. I don't want people tramping through my forest. So I figured out how to take it on the road and bring it to others. And I think it's a game. The other day I asked a friend if she wouldn't mind writing a screenplay about it, because she's a Hollywood writer, and I told you that I'm a collaborator. So I see it as a possibility. As a matter of fact, I haven't been this excited about anything since the Concierge in 1976. I've been a little bit concerned about coming out with this whole thing. I mean, because, hey, I have clients that are world-class clients, and here this other part of me, you know, puts on a felted hat and carries a magic wand and wants to tell people about imagination and enchantment, and so I was a little bit concerned about this, and I was sharing a platform with a brand expert, and I said to him, I said, Bruce, if I come out in the world with my wizard idea and my enchantment idea, am I going to mess up my brand? And he said, no, not at all. And I said, really? How come? And he said, because it's completely congruent with what you teach about service. Everyone that I talk to about this gives me a yes. Everyone. And so I'm encouraged. And well, sometimes people will think, this is crazy. I mean, you know, you have this successful life and you're up in the woods and you dress like a wood sprite and you're giving people tours of an enchanted forest. You know, what is this all about? And you decorated a redwood forest, and give me a break. And other people, many people, say, wow, this is what everybody wants. Everybody wants an enchanted forest. And what I'm saying is, you can have one. You don't have to own a redwood forest. It can be on your own cul-de-sac. It could be on a fire escape. This is all about how you perceive things. The world would be a better place if people thought and acted like a world-class concierge. What's amazing to me is that after over 30 years of having passion for the concierge and believing that it's an art form, I am still this passionate about it and this excited about it. Because when you are a great concierge, you are such a performance artist and you care. A great concierge really actually cares. They express kindness. They are understanding that someone's life and memories are in their hands and that they take responsibility for that, that they get that they don't do it alone, that they get that they're a team player, and that when they're really great, that they're connected worldwide, and that they can help people in 45 countries around the world, that they understand that they can multitask, they know how to triage, they just know how to get along with people, they know how to communicate, and they know how to connect from a heart place.
Thanks for watching this episode of Business with Passion. If you'd like more information about Holly Stiel, other shows, or perhaps to be a guest on a future show, go online to tv.manygoodideas.com.